Hi, friends. Hopefully you heard my intro where I said fantasy football sucks, because it does. So does Ramondre Stevenson. It's week 3. It's week 3 in the Massillon Football League. I'm Ryan. He's Dan. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Better than you, apparently.
Yeah.
I feel great.
Yeah, let's talk about this. So we're doing a late show, which for those who are not aware, I am an old fucking man. This after 10 o'clock thing, I'm exhausted. Just exhausted.
What did you do all day today? Did you have to work? I mean, what?
No, I played like video games, and then I had to go to an event for Marlia, so I had to leave my house, which is already exhausting. It's just not who I am as a person. And then Dan sits here before we even get started and starts rubbing in about all the 5 stars he's getting at our goddamn dynasty in fantasy or college football. If I cannot land 5 stars even at Michigan to save my life. Basically, sports not going my way right now, Dan. Fantasy football not really going either one of our ways. Let's talk about week 2 a little bit. 3 things we learned. I'll get us started. Big upset win for Kenny. QB problems are killing JR, but it was interesting to see Kenny pull that one out because I think he was a unanimous pick for every single one of us. JR only manages 86 points. JR with the Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins. It almost feels like he's in the dilemma you were in last year, Dan, where no matter which quarterback he starts, it's the wrong one.
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in. What's nice for me about this year is no matter what I do, my team's going to suck, so I don't have to worry about it.
I guess that's fair. But yeah, like I said, shout out to Kenny. It's not like he put up a great performance, but he's pulling off wins without his best players, Jamar Chase, really doing anything. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to build on that win. Dan, you got anything from week 2? I have more if you don't, if you need me to feed you some topics.
No, you can do whatever direction you want to go. On the Kenny thing, I kind of want to look up and see. He says he beats JR every year. If that's the case, then we need to keep that in mind for next year. But
I'd say they were rivals last year or 2 years ago, I think. So,
Taylor taking back-to-back losses stuck out to me. I know he's struggling right now as well.
I actually have a fun question for you on that one, where I'm going to have you. We have 3 2-0 teams, 3 0-2 teams, and I want you to pick which 2-0 team could miss the playoffs and which 0-2 team could make the playoffs. So we'll talk about that at the end of the segment.
The thing that sticks out to me is that 3 teams that you predicted to go to the playoffs are 0-2.
Yeah, definitely. Well, no, because Darren's not 0-2. Darren's
JR, Taylor, and myself are all 0-2, and you had us all in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a rough one. Okay. So way do you guys go ahead and ruin that for me. The next one I have, this is kind of a shout out to your preseason pick, Rob Mott's high score for week 2, 149 points. And again, subpar QB play, 11.13 points out of CJ Stroud, but yet he's still out here putting up massive scores. And my one note for Rob Mott's and for that game, Nico Collins looking real legit, Dan, as a football player and as a fantasy asset.
Yeah, Rob knows his number 2 receivers. That's been his claim to fame since we started this dynasty 20 years ago.
Do we think Nico Collins is a number 2? That's kind of where I'm going with this.
Before the season started, where did you do him?
I had Nico Collins as a top 15, maybe top 12 wide receiver.
Well, I'm talking on his team. Did you view him over top of Diggs? Okay.
Yes,
I didn't view it that way.
Okay. I like the rapport he seemed to have built with Stroud last year, and it's carrying into this year. But again, that's kind of where I wanted to go with this. But you said Rob knows his wide receiver twos, and it certainly Nico Collins is taking that step forward. Obviously, Rob should trade him, and he also gets a big week out of DK Metcalf. And so then, Dan, you kind of brought this up inadvertently. I was looking at this, and my first question I was going to ask about this, but we spent a lot of time on last week's show about this because the game was on Thursday, was I was going to be like, how worried are we for our buddy Darren Miller, who's giving me a hard time in the comments about being an old man? How worried are we about, his ties to Tua and then Tyreek Hill? But Darren's 1-1, and that didn't feel like the right question to ask. So instead, I wanted to go with, we have 3 teams that are 2-0 right now, and oddly enough, they're the 3 newest members of this league. Rob P., Greg, and Eric are all sitting at 2-0. I looked over their rosters and unsurprisingly, Greg seems to be the one who jumps out to me, and I'll go ahead and throw this up on the screen now while we're chatting. When I was looking at Greg's roster, no part of this, no offense, Greg, you're managing your ass off. No part of this jumps out to me, Dan, as a playoff roster. He needs Jordan Love on the field. All signs point to not this week, but next week he's going to be back. We don't know how much time Debo is going to miss, but it sounded like it could be an extensive amount of time. And he's all the way down to Zach Ertz now while he's sitting with 2 out tight ends and a tight end on his pup. We've talked about the weird draft enough with Greg. Do you agree it's Greg? Do you think multiple of these teams could still miss the playoffs? I like what I'm seeing out of Eric and Rob P right now.
Oh yeah, Eric and Rob P are both in great spots. It's the fact that someone took Greg's team, drafted for him, proceeded to try to screw him over by drafting multiple kickers and IDPs and all the wrong people, and he still makes the playoffs in this league. We should all be ashamed of ourselves.
To be fair, I made a joke at the drafting, and Greg, it was all love. We were having fun at your expense. You're fully aware of it at this point. I said if he wins the championship, we got to button the league up because that draft into a championship. But then again, we've already had Taylor take no draft into a championship, so maybe a bad draft into a championship is not as bad as what we saw there. And then Dan, on the flip side of that, we have 3 0-2 teams. That would be yourself, JR, and Taylor. And I think the fact that you and Taylor essentially got shot with the same arrow, losing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua for this extended period of time, that gave me JR as the team I think still has a chance at the playoffs. He needs to figure that quarterback situation out. But if we're going to see good Jets and we're going to see good Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, I love Mike Evans. I think we're going to see better Dalton Kincaid as the season progresses. JR of the 0-2 team stands out as me as the one who could make the playoffs. Oddly enough, Taylor has 60 more points than JR scored right now.
If I had to pick one, I'm going to pick Taylor. I think he has the talent. I think he has that magic trade wand of his to pull something else off. I mean, in fact, he already got Murray.
I was going to say, he doesn't have a lot of assets left. He's down to only 6th-round picks, so I don't think he's going to pull too much off.
He'll probably talk Kenny into trading him like 5 draft picks for who's on his bench. I don't know.
Well, probably for JSN. I say, Justin Fields.
That's just Taylor's magic. But I will say that I actually don't think either any of the 3 will actually make the playoffs. But
oh wow, so you think the bad start is going to hold? Well, if you look at it that way, I guess this is interesting. If you look at it that way, I think you can put a fork in me as well. I have the fewest points in the league now. That's amazing. I think you could put a fork.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, you could put a fork in me. We always joke you can start the season with a fork in Kenny, and I think if we're gonna kill Darren because of Miami, there are 8 teams already competing for the playoffs, Dan. So I think that'll be interesting. Maybe next week's a week to finally start looking at the playoff picture a little bit more deeply. We usually wait until week 4, but with as ugly as things have been, maybe we take a look at that next week. And then Dan, I just want to rattle off the 3 trades that went down, get your opinion on all or any of them. So only 3 trades at all. Greg to Taylor. Greg traded Kyler Murray to Taylor for Devin Singletary and a 2. Terry traded Hunter Henry to Horvath for a 2nd-round pick. Did I write that down wrong? Is that true? And then Henry just absolutely chokes on Thursday night. And then Taylor traded Isaiah Likely to Darren for Foster Moreau in a 2. So lots of 2s getting moved this week, Dan. And you kind of pointed out that we didn't even get a chance to talk about Taylor blowing his entire fab on Isaiah Likely. And then I don't even know that Likely played a game with. He was traded before he even got a game out of him, or at least close to that. So Isaiah Likely for Foster Moreau in a 2, Hunter Henry for a 2, Kyler Murray for Singletary in a 2.
He basically traded Likely for Kyler Murray.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So yeah, he picked up that 2 and then immediately sent that 2 out. I see that now. So that's a monster trade now that you pointed out that way. Big win for Taylor in those.
Shocker.
Yeah. You brought up the trade magic wand. So, Horvath is pointing out to me that I was clearly not paying attention. It was a 4th for Hunter Henry. So it wasn't the worst trade in the history of the world, but it certainly wasn't the best after the output for Hunter Henry. But all tight ends kind of suck right now. So you're not going to be mad at one bad game out of Hunter Henry.
Yeah, tight end's not a fun position right now.
It's not. Dan, let's get into week 3. It's ugly. I have these in the order that I want them in, straight from my list, and then I do have a game of the week. I have Darren's picks. Just a quick reminder for last week. I went 5-2. I won the week. Dan, you went 4-3. Darren, you go 3-4. The first week we get all your picks on the show is probably your worst week. That puts me and Darren one game ahead of you, Dan. We're both sitting at 9-5. You are sitting at 8-6 on the season. So for the first matchup of absolutely no consequence, it is Terry versus myself. Dan, I'll let you get started while I scroll the matchup here. The only thing we had going on Thursday night was Ramondre Stevenson, who managed to score less points if I had just decided not to start a running back this week.
Are you going to add a kicker, or are you just going to let this go?
No, I'm going to add a kicker. I can't take that negative. I still have my first round pick, so I'm not going to take any negatives in the lottery. I will have a kicker by kickoff. So.
Gotcha. All right. Either way, going with Terry.
I was going to say, if that influences your decision, we got problems, my guy.
No, I'm just curious what you're doing. No, I mean, I don't care if you pick Justin Tucker up. I'm going with Terry. Until Mahomes and Kelsey show they're going to do something, I'm expecting underproduction on what they're expected to produce from your team. Ramondre Stevens is all kind of, I think if memory serves me correct, he's had 2 really good weeks.
Yeah. This was crazy. Taylor sent me this hilarious picture of a horse drawing. It's this like famous internet meme where like someone was told to finish the horse, and the back of the horse was like perfectly drawn, and the front of the horse looked like a third grader drew it. And it said Ramondre Stevenson's first 2 weeks versus Ramondre Stevenson in week 3. So that's the burn I'm feeling right now.
Nice. I like that. Way to go, Taylor.
Oh, yeah. Taylor's rubbing it in. I guess if he's 0-2, he needs to make sure that I'm reminded of how just absolute shit my team is. So,
even though you have infinity times more wins than he does.
Yeah, I mean, none of it really matters at this point because Dan, I think we're probably looking at the second time in history. And the first time I did it, I did it on purpose because back then you could tank for a pick. I think it's more than likely if Christian McCaffrey is truly not going to be back for another 3 to 4 weeks, I think it's more than likely I'm going to have the worst record in the league this season. My team is dog shit. My gambles at wide receiver did not work out this year.
Like I said, I think Terry walks away with this pretty easily.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I have it as a blowout. I like Terry at every position except tight end, and I agree with you. Tight end isn't the edge it used to be, but I'll still pick Travis Kelce over Cole Kmet 100 times out of 100, my friend.
I think you guys should just go toe-to-toe at this point, Travis Kelce versus Cole Kmet.
Let's do it, Terry. I'll take the negative points in the draft lottery if we can go. Because I'll even take the negative from Andre because I have to. So I will take Travis Kelce minus 1.47 versus Cole Kmet, Terry. You won't do it, bitch. You won't do it.
I think Terry has an advantage at this point.
Wow. I hate you.
Atlanta's defense has been really good. Travis Kelce's looked very non-existent.
Yeah, you got Jesse Bates and I'm losing his name right now, but the kid from Denver out there at safety now. It could actually be a rough game for
Justin Simmons.
Yeah, it could be a rough game for Travis Kelce. Then we got Greg versus Darren. This is another one where Darren's been fucked, and it's kind of a double fuck for him because he lost Tua. He's going with Geno, not a terrible replacement in our league, but he's going with Geno. But then the Tua also affects his Tyreek Hill. So my takeaway on this one is it would have been easy to pick against Darren. By the way, Darren picked Terry as well because he's not a moron, and anybody who picks these games should be picking Terry. So it's easy to look at Darren's team and be worried, Tyreek Hill production. But the fact of the matter is this: I actually hate almost this entire matchup. Every one of these players I have ranked in my fantasy rankings lower than anybody else has them ranked, with the exception of Chris Godwin on Greg's team. But I'm still not picking Greg because I love Darren's 2 running backs. Those are the 2 guys in this matchup that I do like. Tony Pollard looking really good in this like timeshare, but he's getting what he needs out of the timeshare to be super efficient, taking on a Green Bay that is great at slowing down rushing quarterbacks, but terrible at slowing down running backs. And then Zach Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker out and going up against Miami with Skylar Thompson. I think Zach Charbonnet could eat this game and be. I think those two running backs are going to be the big edge for me, and that's why I'm picking Darren to win this one, Dan.
So, while I think Darren has some better players, I'm actually going to go Greg on this. I just feel like Greg's going to pull out a win somehow. I feel like this is just Greg's year.
I was going to say, wow, you're not even going to go with you. You don't even care what the players are saying. You think it's Greg and his karma that are going to win this game for him. Huh?
Yes, I think Greg has put together a lineup that's going to just get lucky, and he's going to play people on a bad week and just win games.
Wow. Like I said, it's going to be an interesting season to watch unfold with Greg after the debacle that was the draft. I just noticed Taylor changed his name to Mr. Back-to-Back L's instead of back-to-back championships. So good on you, Taylor.
That was Tuesday morning.
Yeah, Dan, I don't know if you noticed that last week after you jumped out to the big Thursday lead, I picked against you and I was right. And I'm doing it again this week. So JR jumps out to a huge Thursday lead. 15 points from Breece Hall, 12.5 points from Garrett Wilson, and 23 points from the Jets defense. Darren jumps out to a 50-0 lead on Taylor. But when I look at Taylor's team, as you pointed out, and I don't know why I missed Taylor when I was looking at the hella good 0-2 roster. So I'll actually say Taylor and JR can make the playoffs. But looking at this specific matchup between two 0-2 teams, which just occurred to me, I think Taylor has all the weapons he needs to match every one of JR's performances. I was as high on Jared Goff coming into this season as anybody. I'm eating a ton of crow right now, and Kyler Murray looks great, and I think that's going to end up being the edge on this contest. I think Kyler is going to be the thing that brings Taylor over the top because I think his guys are going to match the performance that we got from JR. By the way, Darren picked himself. Darren is also picking Taylor in this matchup. So far we are in complete agreement. Dan, who you got here?
Going JR.
Oh.
I'm going JR. I think Dobbins over Williams. And I think Goff's going to start to play better. I think you're going to see a better
I hope so.
Goff. Well,
what's interesting is they're playing each other, which that might be the first time this season where we're having quarterbacks literally face each other as well. So
yeah, so that's my reasoning behind it. I think Williams has struggled. I think going against that San Francisco defense without the receivers, I expect Jared Goff to make some better choices in his life on the football field.
What's funny is like they didn't look bad last week and he still couldn't really get it done. And so I don't know. Jared Goff's driving me insane right now because I have him in a ton of leagues, just not in this one. Though JR tried. JR tried to come at me for Mahomes and see what it was going to take to get me to move off Mahomes for Goff and picks. But I'm just not ready to give up my completely average quarterback yet. I'm going to skip Stevie and Eric because they're my game of the week. So we'll move on to Kenny and Phil. No Thursday night matchups here whatsoever. I accidentally clicked on the wrong thing there. No Thursday night matchups whatsoever on this one. So, Dan, I'll let you get us started on Kenny versus Eric.
I find it interesting that Phil has given up and benched Dak Prescott already. Picked up David Carr off the waiver wire there.
Carr in most leagues, and I'm going to verify it here, is the QB2 in fantasy, QB3 in our league. So,
yeah. I'm not saying it's the wrong choice. I find that interesting. Richardson has not looked impressive. I think the running back situation kind of hurts Phil a little bit, but I think his overall team is better. Jamar Chase is the wild card if he goes off. Yeah. But I think he's not in the right headspace right now. So I'm gonna not expect that to happen. I'm gonna go ahead and take Phil for the win.
I am also taking Phil. Darren is also taking Phil. So all agreements between me and Darren, a couple of different picks for Dan there. For me, I said this is really going to come down to which A-Rich shows up. Back in week 1, we saw 23-point Anthony Richardson. And then in week 2, we saw 3.5-point Anthony Richardson. So clearly.
So I understand he scored 23 points that first week, but he was I think it said 9 of 19 passing. Like that, he scored points, but he wasn't great.
Yeah.
It
was. The rushing touchdown helped. 56 rushing yards helped. He got knocked down to 37 and no touchdown in week 2. And then the 3 picks because we penalized turnovers here. So the kid's playing Madden. I don't know how much of him you've watched this season. He literally holds down that power button on every throw. There is no in between for this kid. He literally just rocks and fires every ball. It's fun to watch, but I think it's just going to result in a lot of turnovers. And in some fantasy leagues, that's going to work. In ours, trust me, Mr. Patrick Mahomes, who can't go a game without turning the ball over twice, turnovers are going to kill him. And I had the same thing as you. I do like Jamar Chase, but I feel like there's counters. You got Stephon Diggs in a revenge game. You got Brandon Ayuk as maybe the only healthy wide receiver, but the one that stuck out to me, Brock Bowers is my number one tight end in fantasy football right now, taking on Carolina, who gives up the most, I think the most or the second most fantasy points to tight ends right now. I think Brock Bowers absolutely smashes this week. And then the fact that you have Elijah Moore starting over on this side, there's just a lot of things going wrong for Kenny's team that aren't going wrong for Phil's team. So I agree with you guys. I'm sticking with Phil there. And you said Phil as well, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't have that one typed in yet. All right. That brings us on to Horvath and Motts. Horvath started off with a little bit of dud on Thursday night. As we mentioned, trades that 4, gets 2.4 points out of Hunter Henry. That is the only performance going. And I'll let you get us started on this one as well, Dan.
I'm going Rob. I told you from the beginning of the season I love his team. I will never expect any team that's starting Deshaun Watson at quarterback to win.
I was going to say,
whether that's fantasy or NFL.
Yeah. It's interesting that we have Deshaun Watson starting already in week 3 because Horvath's dealing with the quarterback struggles as well. Thought Trevor Lawrence would be the answer, as many people did, and that certainly does not seem to be the case right now.
I did not think that was going to be the case. I think that Jacksonville has to be questioning at this point. Signing him to that huge contract was a good choice.
Yeah. Darren agrees. Darren also calls this the blowout of the week. I didn't see it as a blowout, though, Dan.
Horvath's receivers will keep him from ever getting blown out.
Well, there's Horvath's receivers, but I got to give Horvath credit at his running backs. He obviously smashed with Jordan Mason, something I should have did. And then Bucky Irving, Rachaad White's dealing with an injury right now. Bucky Irving is looking explosive when he does touch the ball. Denver, one of the worst teams against the running back. Honestly, I think Horvath could stay in this game at every position except quarterback. And I think it's going to come down to whatever CJ Stroud beats Deshaun Watson by, and it'll probably be many. Whatever CJ Stroud beats Deshaun Watson by, that's what I have Motts winning this matchup by. Like, I think it's closer than what Darren thinks it's going to be. And I obviously you agree just because Horvath, like you said, Horvath's wide receivers. Dan, that brings us to you and Eric. Before we get into the game of the week, you had Allen Lazard go 11.4 points out of your flex position. I'll go ahead and get us started here. Close matchup again. I honestly, you guys could cancel each other out in most places. I don't trust Samaje Perine. I don't know what's going on with that Kansas City backfield. I actually like Brian Robinson, and the Bengals have not been great against the run, but none of that really matters. Marvin Harrison could outscore all of your wide receivers by himself. And then Malik Neighbors also has a pretty decent play if they can get him the ball against Cleveland. So out of the strength of his wide receivers in that RB2, I am going to go ahead and pick Eric in this matchup, Dan.
I'm picking Rob. You can pick Eric if you want.
Oh, Rob P. My bad.
No, I'll mark it down. You picked Eric in this matchup, so
that's right.
No,
I didn't pick
Rob.
Eric in his own matchup.
Team is way better than mine. I went with Perine, just hoping he's the guy there. I don't think they're going to continuously give the ball to that rookie fullback that they have. I expect someone to take over. It's not going to be Hunt. They have the other kid who it could be him. It could be Perine. I'm taking my chances that they're going to go with the veteran and Perine.
Well, they're not even bringing Hunt up this week.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Carson Steele. It's going to be Perine. And then they activated Keontae Ingram, who was the kid out in Arizona for a few years.
I couldn't remember who the Ingram was, but I expect it to be Perine. I'm hopeful. I need to put someone in there.
I agree. I mean, injuries have decimated you. I'm starting Justice Hill most weeks. I'm just hoping Zamir White pops off this week. He has the Panthers. It's about time for him to do something. God, I just made so many terrible decisions. But again, another pick where we basically all agree. Let's get back to the game of the week. We got Stevie taking on Eric. I obviously had Eric on the brain. And Dan, I'll let you get us started for the game of the week.
I'm taking Eric. I think he's love his team. I'm interested to see how, like, Baker didn't do great last week. I mean, Denver's not great, but I think Denver's corners are solid. Zach Moss hasn't looked great with the Bengals. Bengals have continued to struggle to run the ball. At this point, it just has to be the way the Bengals choose to run block, because Joe Mixon has struggled for all many years being just an average running back. He went before he got hurt with Houston. He was doing outstanding as an older running back.
Yeah.
So,
I have a theory, and then you would, fantasy football analyst, eat my theory up when I say it on their shows, but you know the Bengals better than me. Is there anything to the fact that every time you guys are looking offensive linemen, you're looking for an offensive lineman to protect Joe Burrow? And are your linemen just better at pass blocking and not that good at run blocking? Because I use that as my anecdotal evidence for the Joe Mixon kind of blow up in Houston.
I don't know if it's just they're not good at run blocking, or if it's the run scheme that they are trying to go with. It also could be a little bit of Joe Mixon being like, crap, I'm 29. I got to put some extra work in, or maybe, again, it could go back to the scheme that Houston runs. It's hard to say exactly what the issue is. Trent Brown has not looked great for the Bengals this year. So if Mims gets healthy and is back soon, that could change some things for their offensive line. It's hard to say if there's necessarily, but I think the Bengals do truly look at pass blocking more than run blocking at this point.
I mean, you have to with the history of Joe Burrow in this league. I feel like you need to do everything you can to keep that guy upright.
Well, the other part of it is offensive line play overall. If you look at the whole NFL, has just been awful. It gets worse every year. Now, some people are saying that they believe it's because of the lack of contact during the whole offseason and training camps, that you don't get to train the way they used to train offensive linemen.
Touchdowns are down like crazy this year too.
Well, did you see what?
Like 63 passing touchdowns after 2 weeks or something like that, which is terrible.
Mel Kiper said he thinks the NFL should ban cover 2 high safeties. You're not. He says you should no longer be allowed to play with 2 high safeties. Should be banned in the NFL.
Mel Kiper, Jesus. Stupidest thing I've ever heard. So Darren, I have bad news for you. We agreed on every single pick. Me and Darren are going Stevie in this matchup. So I don't know if I'm speaking for Darren here, but I think my biggest worry is I'm already worried about Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle hasn't looked that great for many, many moons, and now he has Skylar Thompson at quarterback. When I look at what Stevie's wide receivers, just the starting 2, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Devontae Adams, could do. I mean, I love Rashee Rice, don't get me wrong, but we saw Amon-Ra St. Brown just tear it up last week, 21 fantasy points. I think that's going to be enough to give Stevie an edge. A lot of cancellations in this matchup. I think that was a good trade to bring in Devin Singletary. The other problem is Sam Laporta has not looked good at the expense of Jameson Williams and the aforementioned Amon-Ra St. Brown, whereas Trey McBride, I think, is starting to build a better rapport with Kyler Murray. So I think the edge at wide receiver and tight end is going to give Stevie this matchup.
Pay attention to that flex matchup.
Yeah, I saw that one too. The T. Higgins versus Jaden Reed. When I made my predictions earlier today, there wasn't all this like hyper confidence about T. Higgins. That all came a little bit later in the afternoon. So I will say there is an edge to be gained at T. Higgins over Jaden Reed until Jordan Love gets back, and that's not going to be this week. So you are right. That is one that could at the very least cancel the tight end edge. But I still then would lean Amon-Ra St. Brown and Devontae Adams over Rice and Jalen Waddle. So I'll still give the edge to Stevie on that one, but I do agree with what you're saying 100% there. Dan, as we go on to the game, let me go ahead and close the screen out here. As we go on to the game, I have to tell you that there is something that has happened that has never happened before in the history of our show, which is at least 2 years going on 3 years now. So what I normally do is I just look up our players and I go and I pull the points. So last week, only you and Darren participated. So I go and I look up the points and I put it in. So when I put it in for my 2 players, and let me just remind you guys who we picked, Jalen Hurts and Cooper Kupp, I got 24 points. So I knew I wasn't going to win. And then I looked up Lamar and Saquon and got 24 points. Said, oh shit. So Darren's going to take this win. So I put in Daniels and Jordan Mason and got 24 points. So I had to actually go in and get the decimals on every one of these, Dan. In third place is me at 24.18. In second place is Darren at 24.32. And Dan, you take the win at 24.33. You won by 100th of a point in this game, which is fucking insane in the 3 years we've been doing this show. I've never had to go to the decimals before, let alone down to the 100th decimal point, Dan. So
I'll take
congratulations.
At this point.
Yeah, that's nuts.
I can't believe it was that close. Because I remember you took Cup. I was like, man, that's Ryan's out. So down to me and Darren. Didn't even think about it, you being a possibility of winning still.
Yeah, so Darren boos your win and says shut up to the scoring, which I think is fair. I was blown away by how crazy it was. So again, I already have Darren's players. I'll announce those in a second. Darren, we do not have these in common, though we agreed on every other pick this week. Whoever else is watching, if you guys want to text me your players or drop them in the league chat or drop them in this chat, I'll make sure I announce it if you guys were one of the winners.
Or just
as I mentioned,
ignore us like they do every week.
Or just keep ignoring us. So as I mentioned, Darren did give me his picks already. He is going Derek Carr and Saquon Barkley. He said he was getting crazy with his picks. Dan, do you want me to announce or do you want to go first?
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Two players I really like this week. I've talked them up. Actually, I didn't talk them up enough when I was talking about Taylor's team, but Kyler Murray is high at quarterback for me. I'm going to go Kyler Murray and the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. If the analyst on that is, I agree with you. I think that's going to be the highest scoring game. And this, I guess, is a little bit of DFS theory. I like Kyler Murray more than I like Jared Goff. I could have partnered Kyler Murray with one of his wide receivers, but I figure I'd go to the other side. If Arizona is scoring points, Detroit's going to need to score points to match. And obviously in our league format, Amon-Ra St. Brown could just tear it up in any sort of PPR format. 19 targets last week, led the NFL.
Shocked that neither one of you guys took Alvin Kamara.
Well, Horvath just chimed into the chat. He's going with the Cowboys stack, Dak and CeeDee Lamb.
I'm going to go Burrow and Kamara.
Okay. We got 4 participants this week. And again, if you're watching the show before tomorrow at 1 p.m., get us those picks. Any thoughts on Burrow and Kamara while you're going with those two? Obviously, Kamara, I believe, probably the leading fantasy scorer in the NFL right now.
I mean, that's the reason why I chose him. Burrow, I think he looked a lot better last week going against Washington. And I know that after the game, he said that's the most pissed he's been at any game in his entire life. So I expect him to come out just firing the ball out this week. And I think getting T. Higgins back is going to be huge for that offense.
I saw so many posts of your fans just livid at the refs in that game. So I imagine Joe Burrow is not happy.
It is what it is, man.
Yeah, it's just one of those things.
I saw something today that somebody's like, they posted about how the refs favor the Chiefs in the NFL, and refs favor Ohio State in college. It's the same thing.
Exactly. But what's funny is it's Ohio State fans who are bitching about it happening in the NFL, and then every other fan base who's bitching about it happening in college. So just to make matters even worse. Any parting words for our friends, Dan?
Love you guys. Who's ready for 2025?
Yeah, I'm with you. Normally I would spend this time, telling Terry about how I hope all the terrible things in the world happen to him and nobody else. But at this point, it just feels like empty threats. There's really just no point anymore. Ramondre really let me down. Yeah, fantasy football is not that fun. That's what I put in the league settings. And I'll be honest, Dan, across my entirely too many leagues, I'm having a terrible fucking season. The guys who I thought were going to be good this year are not fucking good. So this is just depressing. And then knowing that I'm going to lose to you 3 times every year at the Ohio State, Michigan battle we have going on in college, I really just don't know why I wake up most mornings. So
I don't know why you do it. I'm just more leader.
Yeah, I guess that's the one thing I have going for me. So
unless
Darren's parting words are don't dive headfirst into a DB. I think that's fair too. I think you should be sending that as a love letter to your quarterback there, because that's not working out well for anyone. All right, guys, have a wonderful Sunday, except for Terry. Talk to you guys next week. Bye.